Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Webcomic Book Club podcast. I'm Zae,
I'm Mek.
and this week we're talking about Kiwi Blitz.
Kiwi Blitz was fun. I enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it?
I did. It's yet again another one you suggested that's going on my list of webcomics to follow.
Good to know I have that. I have good taste in that. But to summarize...
Can I give it a shot real quick? A young German girl kicks supervillain ass with a Kiwi Mac.
Yes, because her rich father.
Yes, because her rich robotic engineer father.
Man, the more... And she has a sidekick who, is better at martial arts than she is.
And is like basically he is, if anyone reads comics, Batgirl. He is the Batgirl to her Batman.
I was going to make this into a huge Batman thing. I just realized that's surprisingly similar to Batman, except for anything to do with personalities.
Yeah. And then they have the robot, which I love. I love the robot
42?
so much.
You love 42?
I love 42.
Okay. So this comic is set in a futuristic era.
Sort of. It's kind of like an alternate present.
I always considered it very futuristic because it deals with a lot of futuristic technologies.
I suppose.
And it is futuristic because I always read the descriptions of the stuff, and the webcomic artist straight up says that it's always an issue drawing future things because by the time a couple years roll by, it looks old as hell.
And I was just about to say, I would categorize it as a future before the dystopia. It's it really reminds me of sci-fi animes without the grittiness.
It's set after World War III or a third World War.
Oh, that's true.
So
that's true.
So it has to be the future at that point. I mean, we're kind of discussing if it's a future or not, but I mean,
yeah,
that's ultimately pointless.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of sci-fi, futuristic sci-fi anime without the grittiness.
Yeah,
it's just kind of cute.
So I actually like this comic a lot myself. I had found this comic a long time ago when I was keeping up with 40 comics all at once and actually reading all of them and keeping track of all of them.
Yeah, and then you refound it when we were actually looking for comics for this.
Yeah, we refound it and I just immediately hit follow again, and I started to keep up with it again, pretty much for this podcast. And it was much better than I had remembered it. I must have just lost over a lot of information back then, but where the story went after I had stopped remembering what was happening, I really, really enjoyed it.
Okay.
And murder furries.
Yes, murder furries.
It seems like that's the main villain right now.
Yeah, it's first huge arc is the evil villain group is furries.
Yeah, just through and through they're furries, and I think that's hilarious because the main character, Steffi
Fröhlich.
German.
I don't know German very well.
Steffi German. She hates furries, and I think it's hilarious because she's just what the internet comment section of furries.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I'm loving reading this. Before we get too far into this, the webcomic is made by Mary Cagle. Cagle.
I always read it as Kaggle.
Cagle. Yeah, last names are always annoying.
Yeah.
So, but she goes by Cube Watermelon on any social media website. Even her Patreon is Cube Watermelon. So Twitter at Cube Watermelon, Patreon at Cube Watermelon, things like that.
Cube or cubed?
Cube, not
okay.
cubed.
Okay.
Cube. Just a cube. It's not a
square
watermelon that is cubed up. Yeah, it's a square watermelon. Which I always found funny because you can grow watermelons as cubes, and I wonder if that was the inspiration for the name or if there was something else beforehand.
I was going to mention that, but I thought it would get us too off topic.
It would, which is why we're going to move back to the comic. So, geez, she keeps busy.
Oh, yes. She has, 3 or 4 webcomics?
3, but these characters in this comic existed before in a comic called Law of Talos, is what I could see it read as. Or see it as. It was always LO or LOT for anything it was said, but in descriptions a lot it was Law of Talos, and it was only under DeviantArt.
Jeez.
Yeah, but that was back in 2008. This comic started in 2009. So it was like these characters existed beforehand, and there's a lot of jokes. And actually, she made references to that comic in Kiwi Blitz.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So would you recommend someone reads this comic before Kiwi Blitz?
Oh no,
Okay.
it's completely non-canonical. It's
Okay.
just in existence. But yeah, she makes occasional references. It also is like a more steampunky style.
Okay, yeah, I remember you talking about this. It sounded very interesting. Something I'd like to look at, maybe not something I'd enjoy reading. Anyway, back to Kiwi Blitz. Or at least her keeping busy.
But you know, she has 3 comics, so Kiwi Blitz, Sleepless Domain, and Let's Speak English.
Yeah. What's interesting about Sleepless Domain is I like just after the first episode of the Webcomic Book Club podcast came out, I went on a bit of a binge of just looking for webcomics that I would enjoy following and just following them.
Good, because most of the comics are mine that are in the list.
Yeah. And one of them that I found was Sleepless Domain. And I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm on chapter 3, page 17. That's like the most recent. Started in April and goes to now. And I didn't find out until like the end of reading Kiwi Blitz that the same person wrote both.
So, this comic does a couple of interesting things that I actually really, really enjoy. Namely, all of the like chapters are called tracks, and like the little things in between are called sound bites, and they actually put like songs for them,
Which I didn't realize, so I'm now going to have to go through and listen to each of the like chapter songs.
The first half you can't listen to because like their YouTube videos were taken down due to like copyright strikes and things
I'll
like
find
that.
it somewhere.
Yeah, you'll find them somewhere. So yeah, the ones that you can listen to, I've been listening through and I love them. Like this person has a very, very nice music taste for me. So I'm actually going to be following a few of these musical artists, which is fantastic. I love it when that happens, and this was not expected whatsoever. But they actually fit really, really well with the arcs. I found myself like whenever a new arc would come, or whenever a new track would come up, I would immediately play it, put on my headphones, and listen to it until it runs out while reading the comic. And it was astounding how well it fit for that section of the comic.
Okay, that's very interesting. I'll have to give that a shot.
Yeah, it was absolutely worthwhile. The only issue I had is occasionally there was lyrics in the songs, and that's a little bit awkward.
Listening and reading are hard.
Yeah, you kind of get used to it once you think of it as background music, but it still fit really well. I think it was a very, very nice touch to do. Okay, so let's talk about the art for a bit. What did you think of the art for this comic?
I was a little bit disappointed. Not in the art itself, but in the fact that I couldn't see like the first page as it originally was, because she's actually going through and redoing the art to her current style. But overall, I enjoyed it. It served the story very well. Like, it was cutesy when needed, but could become serious, which is very much what this comic was.
So yeah, about that with the artist going through redoing it. So, Law of Talos was the comic before this, and basically immediately after Law of Talos, she started working on Kiwi Blitz. Law of Talos was a very, very chibi style, like super chibis.
Chibi steampunk.
Yeah, pretty much. And it very, very rarely broke out of that. So when she started moving into this, which is a much more, I don't want to say realistic, but a much different style.
Much more defined.
Yeah, much more defined
There's
style.
not as much interpretation by the viewer.
Okay. That's a fair way to put it. But the first, couple of chapters were really, really rough, and the descriptions really made that clear. Like, she constantly talked about like how the faces were squished in really awkward ways, or like how things in the background didn't make any sense, or just like she was constantly complaining about her art in the description section of like and how much she wanted to go back and redo it. So she did.
Yeah, which is good for an artist to do.
It is. The thing is that it's always a weird trap to start redrawing your comics, because by the time you're done redrawing all of them till you're happy, you don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
And so you end up wanting to redo it again in most cases. So I'm always terrified whenever I see that happen, because that is something you can go into very easily. And after you talked about how you want to see the original comics, you can find them.
Can I?
Yeah, to my understanding, it's in the
archives, I would
I
imagine.
think it's in the archives.
Okay.
I remember seeing that it was an option to actually see it, or at least in the description you could see the original upload of each of them.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can, and it's not worthwhile.
It's always interesting to see how far an artist has come in a webcomic.
What's interesting is that the title cards got the biggest change, but the rest actually, other than like smarter poses and like just better quality of art, they didn't change a whole lot.
Really?
Yeah, like almost the exact same like content is in each of the pages, which is to be expected, but really it's just like moved around a little bit differently.
Okay.
And then, well, they paid more attention to like less straight lines, more curves, basically, is what I noticed, and more dramatic line work.
Which really helps the story remain cute but serious.
Exactly. And it does a fantastic job of doing that, actually.
It does.
There's a lot of times where, like, without changing the style, I thought things were very dramatic, very serious, and in other cases, without changing the style, it was really cute and really funny.
It's basically a case of the like how it's drawn does not affect the world. It's what's happening that affects it. Like that's what affects your interpretation of how the comic feels.
Yeah, so it's a very, very good style for making this comic, and I'm very, very happy with it. And I'm not completely caught up with it because we only have to read up to 300 pages for this. I got to page 388, and where I'm at right now, I think there's actually a different artist doing all the pencils. Yeah, right now the pencils are made by Gracie Liu, Liu.
Okay.
I am really, really happy with how it looks with Gracie Liu doing the pencils and with Mary doing the colors. Looks as though she's not anymore, but from what I can see of the newer pages, she definitely learned a lot about doing things in like a more dramatic way or more just like a different style, which was, I think actually it was a very nice change. Seeing how it changed. So, that being said, I don't want her to go back and redraw it.
Well, I wouldn't mind her going back and redrawing it if once she catches up to where she first decided to redraw. Once she catches up to there, if she just moves on, because getting caught in that trap would suck for this comic. I so want to see this comic go so much farther, and I don't want to see it get stuck.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen. She seems very, very competent at what she does. The update schedule.
The update schedule, from what I saw, seemed like it was very on track until recently when they got a lot busier with their like average day-to-day life. They're moving back to the States, I think.
Yep, which is a huge pain in the ass if you're anywhere overseas.
Yeah, and I don't know about Learn to Speak English, but I know they're also keeping Sleepless Domain pretty regularly updated while they're doing this. So I can imagine that, or I'm okay with them going on a bit of a hiatus for now, just because they're very busy.
Yeah, the comic was one a week at first, and then moved to 2 a week for a while, back to 1 a week, and then back to 2 a week from where I'm at right now in the story arc. They are on a hiatus since when, November?
Something like that, yeah.
So it's been a little while. I hope they get back to it, and I really hope this doesn't like turn out to be a longer hiatus. Like maybe something happened and like they just don't want to continue it anymore. Things like that. That can always happen. And whenever there's an extended hiatus, it's more and more likely that can happen. That being said, it probably won't because she seems like she really enjoys working on this comic.
And comics in general, she seems like she just enjoys what she does.
Yeah. Early on, she, again, like I said, I always read descriptions of these things because it is very fascinating to talk about this. She went to college to major in sequential art, which is comics. And while she was there, she actually interned for other webcomic artists.
Oh, that's right.
And a few like really big names, webcomic artists. And she was so freaking happy in the descriptions to talk when she was talking about these things. It was actually fantastic to read. But yeah, no, this seems like her full-time job. This is what she wants to do. And so I very strongly think that she's going to be continuing it.
Yeah. I would love to see this in like comic book format. Not like in terms of online she goes to comic book pages versions, but like I would love to be able to buy books of this.
Like just buy a graphic novel.
Yes. I would love to buy this as a graphic novel.
Yeah, I mean, she does the. It looks like she's selling volumes of the comic, and this is one of those cases where it absolutely seems like a style that can move over to a comic book format very, very easily.
Yeah.
I don't think she will though.
Probably not. I mean, I would just like to own a physical copy of this comic, basically.
Well.
Throw more money at the artist.
Well, lucky for you, you can do just that. I haven't looked at all on the website to see how possible it is. But before we like move away from this and start doing the roulette for the next comic, since I think that's coming up here soon, there's actually one thing that this comic talked about, not this comic, but the artist talked about in the descriptions back when I would originally read this, that single-handedly made me super terrified to ever work on comics.
Really?
Yes, this is like the one thing that like just made me super, super terrified. I have no idea why. And it was one of the early fight scenes. Like I think with the block bot or like the arachnobot or something and the Kiwi.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that fighting scene in the description box at the bottom, she talked about how like, man, I've been working on this thing for like 3 months, but for anyone who's just catching up now, it's only been like 30 seconds.
I actually remember reading that. I think I must have read the descriptions like the first 100 comics or so.
And that is equal parts amazing and terrifying to me.
It's very interesting to think about. It's like you have to have a good sense of timing. You have to have a great sense of timing because something that took you so much longer to do and took people, a week or two or, a few days at least to see. If anyone goes back and reads it, it's a click. It's a mouse click.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting balance to like slow the comic down enough so that anybody who's catching up or is trying to keep up won't like just be hit with this flurry of information, while at the same time not dragging it out so long for yourself that you're spending months literally drawing the same few characters talking to each other.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting like just difference in viewing these and keeping up with them versus catching up with them.
Yeah. You have to be conscious of both.
Yeah. So I think that's a very good note to end this week on.
Does she have a Twitter?
Yeah, I talked about earlier. It's at Cube Watermelon.
Right.
So that's just social media, everything Cube Watermelon. From what I could tell, that's what she uses for everything. So, let's spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel of webcomics.
This next comic we're going to be reading is Slightly Damned.
I have heard of Slightly Damned, but I haven't heard much of Slightly Damned.
Okay, so just to make this easy, Slightly Damned, you can find it at sdamned.com. DAMNED, damned. That's damned. So, if anybody wants to read along, this comic has been going on for quite some time. This is one of those that I had kept up with way in the past, and actually one that I continued keeping up with for a while, but dropped off when I stopped reading comics for a while, hence why we have this show now. But basically, it's a story of what happens if you're not you're not a good person, but you're not strictly a bad person. What happens when you die?
Okay.
When you're judged to go to heaven or hell, where do you end up? Well, when you're judged to go to heaven or hell, where do you end up? Well, in this case, the character ended up in this ring of the slightly damned, wherein it's not like torturous hell, it's mostly just a boring purgatory. And her adventures with like demons that are equally slightly damned. They're not great demons, but they're not like going to be leaving anytime soon.
Okay. This sounds very interesting.
Yeah, and it takes a few twists that are very, very nice to read. So, hope you all keep up with us and see you next week or 2 weeks.
In a couple weeks.
What day is that going to be?
Today is the 30th of January. This next one will be going up on the 13th of February.
Well, see you all then. Have a wonderful time.
Goodbye.